Hey, what's up, y'all? Chris here with Rooted. Really excited to jump into this Revelation song tutorial for you guys here today. It's going to be awesome. We're going to learn to play it, and we're really going to come a long way on this song. It's going to be awesome. If you've always wanted to learn to play this one, but maybe just didn't understand what was going on too much, or just wasn't able to do it, today is your day. So let's jump right into the chord chart. So what we see at the top here is obviously the name Revelation song. That's the name of the song. We're in the key of D. All right, we'll talk more about that in just a second. And then we are also in 4/4 time, okay? So the main thing you want to pay attention to is that first 4 on the left-hand side of the slash, all right? That first 4 tells us that we have 4 beats in every measure. And we'll get back to that here in just a second. Last piece at the top here is the tempo, all right? We're at 62 BPM. That's a pretty slow tempo that we're working with, okay? So then from there, we see the rest of the chord chart, and you can see there's a lot of writing, right? There's a lot of numbers. There is a lot of writing. And some of it may make sense to you, some of it may not. And at this point, what I want to do is help you make sense of it, okay? Each section here is broken down into its chords and then what the right hand and left hand of each section is doing. We do that to try and make sure you know exactly what you need to do from the teaching and the chord chart, okay? So the first thing I want to do before we even jump into all of this is I want to dive into the key and the scale, and then the chords that are associated with each key, okay? So if you're not familiar, the key, all the keys of music are basically groups of notes that are derived from obviously all the notes in music, but groups of notes that sound really good together, okay? So we have all these different groups of notes that sound really good together, and the biggest thing that we want to do is we want to understand the way that these groups of notes are and the way that they work, their rules. And the better that we understand these notes, the better we have the power then to play any song that we really want to, because just about every song is going to be in a different key or have different nuance with the same key. So the better that we understand these keys, the better we're going to be able to play this type of music. And then from there we kind of dive into the natural number system, which is a really key point to understand here in music. So let's jump into the key of D. So in music, we have all these different notes, right? As if you look at the piano here, you see 88 different notes that we have on the piano. And they are all grouped into these groups of notes that sound good together. And one of those groups is called the key of D, okay? And the key of D has 2 rules we have to remember about it. Every F, here's an F, that's an F sharp. Every F has to be sharped. So every F, we're going to play that one. And every C has to be sharped as well. So for every C, we'll play that one, okay? Those are the 2 rules. Every other note on the piano will be a white note, a natural note, and I'm going to show you kind of a breakdown of the key of D right now. I'm going to show you its scale, which is like a map of the key of D, okay? So the scale is broken into 7 different notes, which looks like this, all right? We have our first note, which is a D right here, okay? There's our first note. Then we have our second note, which is an E right there. Then we have our third note, an F sharp. And then our fourth note is a G. Our fifth note's an A. Sixth note is a B. Seventh note is a C sharp. And our eighth note is a D right there. So we have 8 different notes between that octave right there, okay? 8 total notes. 7 different notes between that octave, that group of 8 notes right there. And our 2 rules are that we always have to sharp F's and C's, okay? So that's our D major scale. And just so you know, the way that I'm playing this is with my thumb, pointer, and then middle finger, then bringing my thumb underneath to play G, and then pointer again, middle, ring, and then pinky again, okay? So that's our D major scale. Now it's really important that we understand that scale, because then from there we get our chords, and chords are what we will use to play just about every worship song out there, not just this one, but really any other song. So what you're learning today really goes deep and goes beyond just Revelation song. It really applies to every song out there in music, not even just worship music. So it's really good stuff what you're getting today. So our chords are built off the first, third, and fifth note of every scale that we play. So if we play those 3 together, we get what's called our 1 chord, okay? That's our 1 chord in the key of D. Now, this chord also has an actual name to it, right? Not just one. but it has an actual name. This would be called a D major, okay? And we'll talk more about this in just a second. But every number has kind of a property. Every chord has a property to it, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. So this is our one chord, our D major, and it's our one chord because our root note, our bottom note's on the first note of the D scale, okay? So there's our one chord. So we're going to get our two chord then, just like we had 7 different notes in the D scale, we have 7 different chords in the key of D. So if we want to find our 2, we need to move our fingers one note to the right based on the D scale. And if we do that, we get these guys right here. This is our E minor chord, all right? And then we get to our 3 chord by moving again one note to the right with each finger, and we get these guys. Remember, we have to sharp F's and C's. Those are the 2 rules in the key of D. There's our 3 chord, F sharp minor. Here's our 4. This is our G major. And then our 5 chord, A major. And then our 6th chord, B minor. And then our 7 chord is C sharp diminished, okay? C sharp diminished. And so from there, now we have a good idea of what our 7 different notes are that we can play in the key of D and what our 7 chords are in the key of D. But that's kind of the first piece of the puzzle, okay? With each chord, I want to help you understand the chord names as well, not just the number. So you may be asking, how did I know that this was called a D major? Well, in every single key of music, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord are all major chords. They're all what's called happy chords, okay, major chords. They're all going to sound happy. So the 1, the 4, and the 5 in every key are all major, okay? Likewise, the 2, the 3, and the 6 chords are all minor in every key, and the 7 is always a diminished chord, okay? So all you have to do to know how to call a chord by name is by knowing what note the root note is. That's a D, okay? And then you know what number we're on a 1 chord. So the 1 chord is always a major chord, right? So that's a D major. All right, if we want to play our 2 chord, we know that our root note is an E, so that's the first part of the name. The second part of the name is going to be major or minor, and our 2 chord in every key is a minor, right? Our 3 chord, same way. F sharp, 3 chord is always a minor, right? So if you remember, 1, 4, 5 are major, 2, 3, 6 are always minor, and 7 is diminished. Every key works that same way. So once you learn that foundational piece, that template, it works for every key and every song in music. It's awesome. But from there, understanding those really basic forms of those chords, that's great, but we have some nuance that we have to understand in that as well. We need to understand 2 other things that are really crucial, especially in worship music, okay? We got to understand what inversions are, and that's what I want to show you here just real quick. So in music, we have a few different ways we can play each chord, right? We have what's called our root position version of the chord, okay? So that's what I showed you just a second ago. That would be root position. That would be root position. What makes root position itself is that our bottom note is the root note of the chord, okay? If we're playing the 1 chord, our bottom note is the first note of the scale. If we're calling the chord by the letter name D major, our bottom note has to be on the D, okay? So what we want to do then is we want to be able to invert these chords. We want to be able to play these chords using some alternate voicings, what's called voicings, all right? And this just gives us some flexibility in how we play. It allows us to play cohesive, better sounding music as we use these chords. Okay, so this is our 1 chord, and then what makes it a 1 chord is that we're playing a D, an F sharp, and an A. If we play these guys, that's not a 1 chord anymore. Or if we play these guys, that's not a 1 chord anymore. That's an entirely different chord. But because we're playing these 3 notes, that's what makes it a 1 chord or a D major, all right? Now, what we want to do, though, is we want to flip these notes around. That's what inversions are. We flip the notes around in a slightly different order, okay? So let's do this. Let's bring D to the very end of the chord and play the chord just like that. Okay, we could play it here. We could also play it down here. It doesn't really matter where we play it on the piano, as long as we're using those 3 notes in that order. That would be called first inversion, okay, because we've moved the notes around. We flipped them around. We flipped the D from the bottom to the top. So that's our first inversion of our 1 chord, of our D major, all right? But we also have second inversion, and you can probably guess what's going to happen here. We're moving our F sharp now to the end of the chord, all right? So there's our second inversion. We can play it down here, down here, down here. Doesn't really matter where we play it. That's a second inversion of the D major. And every single chord works that same way. We have root. Here's our 2 chord in D. There's our E minor. There's root. There's first inversion. and second inversion. And the main thing, if you're new at this, that you want to make sure you're doing is keeping those same 3 letters, those same 3 notes consistent throughout. So even though I'm moving the notes around, I'm never playing anything other than a D, an F sharp, and an A. Even when I'm doing this, I still got my D, my F sharp, and my A, right? D, F sharp, A. So that's the critical piece of this, because it's real easy if you're new at this to mistake an inversion, mistake some notes, move some notes around that maybe you're not used to. If you're not used to doing this, real easy to do. I see it happen all the time. So you really want to be careful, pay close attention, be intentional about what notes you're playing to make sure that you're doing this the right way. And the biggest thing you can just do is practice this, right? Just get in front of your piano and play through your inversions over and over to make sure that you feel more comfortable. Spending time with your instrument, with piano, is just going to make a world of difference as you do this, okay? So those are your inversions, and you're going to see those listed in the chord chart here in just a minute. Secondly, the other thing I want to talk to you about here before we get rolling in the chart is what's called a suspended chord, okay? Suspended chord. In this key of D, and really in every key, we have different chords that, we have some modified versions of chords, okay? So here's our 1 chord, our D major. You're gonna see at some points a little sus, like a sus, okay? That sus stands for the word suspended. And what that means that we're doing to the chord is removing the middle note of that chord, either up to the 4th note in the scale or down to the 2nd note in that scale of the chord, okay? So if we see a D sus4 or a 1 sus4, okay, we'll see, okay, we're playing a 1 chord, but we're sussing it. We're suspending that middle note either up or down. And then how do we know whether we go up or down? Well, that's based on the number that comes after the 3 letters sus, right? If we see sus4, we know we got to move here to the 4th note in the scale. So we'd play that. If we see a D sus2 or a 1 sus2, we got to move the middle note down to the 2nd note in the chord, okay? So you'll see that some in this chart as well. One other last final piece of info I want to give you before we dive into the chord chart here is I want to make sure that you understand what these little lowercase b's look like. So let me find a spot here in the chart, like this right here. This is a great example right here. This would be pronounced flat 7 over 5, okay? Flat 7 over 5. What a flat 7 chord is, or what a flat is basically in music, is we're moving a note, just like we sharped F, we took F from here and sharped it, we moved the note higher. A flat simply takes a note, whatever note it is, and brings it to the left, what's called a half step, 1 note to the left. So what we're essentially going to be doing with our 7 chord, if you remember our 7 chord was a C sharp, okay, that was a C sharp diminished. What we're essentially going to do with our flat 7 chord is all we're going to do is we're going to flat that 7th note, moving it down to C. So if you remember back to our rules, you remember that we can't play a C natural. We're supposed to play every chord within the rules, right? Every C has to be sharped, every F has to be sharped, and so forth. But what we're doing here is we're taking what's called some borrowed chords from some other keys and bringing them into this song. This happens sometimes in worship music, not a whole lot, not often, but it does happen some in music, and it's good to be aware of it. So if you see a flat 7 chord, it means you're literally taking the 7 chord and just flatting that root note back to its natural form here, and then you're good to go, and that's how you'll play your flat 7 chord. And obviously we can invert it like that or like that, but that's kind of the root of the flat 7 chord right there, okay? Last piece of information before we jump in, I know I keep saying that. One other thing I want to clear up is even in this right here, you see flat 7/5. The way that that's pronounced is flat 7 over 5, okay? So what you want to think in every single chart like this is you want to think right hand over left hand. So what I mean by that is your right hand's always going to play the chord that's to the left of the slash. So if we were seeing flat 7 over 5, here's how this would look on the piano. We'd see a flat 7. We already talked about what that was. And then so that's what a right hand's doing. Flat 7 over 5 means the 5th note in the D scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what we're doing there, flat 7 over 5. Anytime you see those numbers slash another number, that's how you want to read it. And you can always refer to this little template right here in the chord chart to make sure you have that right. And so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive in to showing you exactly how to play this song from top to bottom in a full-on tutorial where you're going to see exactly how we take the information that's on this chord chart and put it directly in the song and how it really incorporates along with the actual recorded song. So if you're looking at this chord chart, which you can obviously download using the link below, if you're looking at this chord chart and you're still saying, hey, the pieces just aren't adding up for me, I'm not really at the point where I am able to just read this chord chart and know what these things mean, even with some of the help right here, the right hand, left hand pieces, same chords as intro, even with that help, I'm not to that point. Then I really would love for you to click the link below this video where you're going to see a link for our Unlimited Worship Piano Tutorials course. That is an amazing course where we're going to get in and we're going to go through every single section in detail and do more than even what we did here today. Yes, we talked about inversions, we talked about suspended chords, things like that, but we're going to get even more into the nitty-gritty of each song and really help you learn to play everything really well and help you become a better piano, more fluent worship piano player, which is probably what your goal is. So I would encourage you, and you can get started for a really low monthly affordable price. So I would encourage you to click that link if this just isn't really cutting it for you, and I would love to dive in with you further and just help you move forward in your musical growth here together. So without anything further, we're going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to show you exactly how to play this song from the top down.